So to finish up on PAOLA-2, not PAOLA-2, PAOLA-1 as well, is there are multiple things that we can do to help patients do better. We've talked about treatment. The other thing that we can do to help patients do better is the quality of the surgery. So there was a paper that talked about sort of these surgical subsets by Grimm. Leslie, tell us about that paper.
So again, another, retrospective hypothesis generating analysis. So Grimm looked at the subsets of surgical outcomes. So neoadjuvant with interval debulking versus primary debulking surgery with an optimal versus, or no gross residual versus residual disease. And it's really interesting, this analysis. So it almost looks like it's all prognostic. And the reason I say it almost looks all prognostic is they didn't show any benefit favoring any surgical group except for the stage 3 patients who had upfront surgery with no gross residual disease, and then showed potentially more benefit of the combination in that group. Which I actually, as a surgeon, was happy to see that, because I'm starting to feel like there's no reason to operate on my patients anymore. And so I was actually happy to see that. But but in the other groups, there was really no differential benefit. In the control arm, the median PFS for placebo group was all over the place, suggesting that really these surgical groups are still mostly prognostic and not predictive of treatment effect. And interestingly, there was a similar study done, reported by Kara Matthews from PAOLA-1, that showed none of these subgroups really mattered, which was the first time that we had ever seen those surgical factors not be prognostic, was when in PAOLA-1.
I think the take-home message, whether it's PAOLA-1 or PAOLA-1, is that no matter what the surgical outcome is, that the targeted therapy helps.
Right.
And it helps the most in the primary debulking R0, right? Mm-hmm. But even if you have interval debulking, it still helps in the best prognosis, which again is complete resection.
Right. I made that too complicated. That is the right.
That's the. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, another way to twist that is simply to say, as our drugs get better, they're having a bigger impact across all patients, and maybe the surgery portion of it has less of an impact.
So Rob Coleman and I have a little talk that we've written, and we continue to evolve. And the title of that talk is "Targeted Therapy Cuts Deeper Than the Knife."
Yeah, I think I've seen that.
Go ahead, Matt. You had a comment?
Yeah, I would say, and this really challenged me, because I think, as Shannon said earlier, our pivot point is usually, am I going to give bevacizumab? Even before, cycle 1, I'm trying to decide, am I giving bevacizumab? And now that this, cohort group looks like, it's a favorable population that was helped most from this dual targeted therapy addition. I'm kind of scratching my head saying, well, maybe, is it everybody that needs this? Is it just those that had, our previous need for Bev only? Is that my pivot point? It really adds more confusion the more we learn about how these trials inform us.
Well, bevacizumab helps everyone. It's just that it helps reduce ascites. It helps probably prolong survival in stage 4 patients. But the hazard ratios in the smaller volume disease patients are not different or dissimilar than the large volume disease. It's just that the survival and the ascites sort of moves on to a greater benefit, but it still has a PFS advantage.